We've done data acquisition at this point. What kinds of data are we looking at? What kind of thoughts do we have? A lot of these are the same thoughts that we did with computer forensics. They apply to mobile forensics, but we have some more. So we'll dig into some of the details here, and then we'll look at a list in just a second. So first off, logs. Any kind of logs that are on the phone, whatever. Usually it's the call log that you're interested in on the mobile phone. The MAC times, that's modified access change times for files that are on the phone. So that means that you're also looking at the file system on the particular phone. That may mean that you have to root that phone to get down into the operating system to see those phones. The author of the files. In mobile phones, that's usually one person. You really don't have anybody else. But I think there will come a day where in mobile phones we will have something like virtual mobile phones or virtual operating systems within a single device. Timeline of events. You're going to lay this out and say, this is when these calls were made at this particular time and this particular length. That's what's really nice about the smartphone is it says we called this person, and then you can dig down into the details of that call, and they say that call lasted for this amount of time. That's excellent for establishing a timeline if you can get into that data. And then look for the hidden information within that phone. What's the hidden information going to be there? Is there going to be any files that are sitting on the phone? So you might have to do a little steg analysis if you pulled that data off. You might have to do some cryptanalysis. You might have to dig into it. You might even have to do some password cracking to get to some of these files that are on the physical phone. I actually have an application on my phone that is my little encryption safe where it keeps my sensitive notes and encrypts them under a different password. These are becoming more and more prevalent. They're being built into the more robust applications that are being installed for most of the phones, both Android and Apple. Also, you're looking for the last number dialed. By the way, last number dialed might be here. Most of the time it is. Document everything. That's pretty standard practice in forensics. Make sure that you're documenting your chain of custody as you're going along. If you're disassembling this, make sure that you take pictures and then you document exactly what you've done and how you've removed particular elements in this set. When we get to the reporting phase and the expert witness phase, this documentation becomes the basis for whether your evidence gets accepted or not. Screenshots. If you've got the phone open, there are cameras that are just designated for this very purpose of, okay, I hit this button, this is what I got for a screen capture, so I'll go ahead and actually do a screenshot of what's displayed here with an external camera. Make sure that that evidence is precisely labeled and accounted for and identified at all phases in your document, in your entire forensics process. That documentation could be key. It may be that you know that you brought the battery back with this and the SIM card was in a separate evidence bag. If it was labeled properly, you'd be in a really good space. If it wasn't, this may be scattered throughout thousands and thousands of pieces. A lot of times we will get a broken phone. It'll be dropped on the ground and smashed. You need to pick up all those little tiny pieces that come along with it because you might have to reassemble the phone. You're going to report. You're going to give this to somebody else and you're going to tell them all this information. So let's talk about these basics of reporting here. The reporting agency, the case identifier, investigator, name of submitter, and the date of receipt. Additionally, you're going to list the items, the serial numbers, and the model numbers. Serial numbers and model numbers become really important, especially when you look at this phone and you need a connector to go into it. Let's say that it's been turned off. The serial number and model number will tell you, okay, this physical connector, I'll go look that up in my database of connectors. This is the one that fits. What may happen in a lot of cases is they'll actually scratch off all the names and all the serial number information on this to make it a lot harder on you. Then we got to do a whole different search to find it. So they may alter the outside of this in its appearance and all the names and the evidence on there so that it's very difficult for you to track it down. Usually this is with disposable phones that they will literally sand off all that identifying information, and then you've just got to sit there and do a trial and error, figure out whether that plug's actually working. Take good detailed pictures of it before you actually try and plug something into it. Usually if you've got the camera set up, it's on an arm sitting over top of your evidence, so you can hold the phone down like this, and here's where my connector is right there. You can hold the phone down like this and you can shoot a nice clean picture of that right there and then blow that up. There's actually a couple of sites out there where you can post that that image of the connector, and they'll actually tell you what connector that is and how to get to it. You want to get all of your equipment and your setup used in your examination. You want to know that you documented with this kind of camera, this kind of setup at this particular location. Again, this is kind of chain of custody stuff, but now we're getting more into the reporting of the evidence. This is my process for doing this was such, and you can repeat this process. That's what we're trying to do in the report. It's not the evidence of, it's that my process is scientifically sound. This becomes very important when we're going to testify. Find out and make sure that you're putting the date of the report, and as you work with the evidence, you put the dates in again, and then who the examiner is. That would be you. We want to get a bunch of little pieces of data, and we've talked about a couple of things like the call log and things like that, but let's get some other data in here. Let's look for some other things. Connectivity and retrieval, if there's any kind of connectivity to this device, let's look at it. Personal Information Manager applications. What is the version of the application? What is the version of the iOS, or I'm sorry, the OS on that particular device? What are the dialed and received phone calls? You can look at the call log and you can actually scroll through that, put that up again with your photo, with your camera. You're going to look down at that device, you're going to scroll up, you're going to look at each one of those calls and record all of that information, who they actually called, what the phone numbers were, how long they took to do that. You want all that rich data. I know when I look at my device today, I can scroll for at least probably the last 3 weeks of calls that are on my phone, and it will tell me everybody who I called and everybody who called me. Also the SMS messages. So you go over into the messaging system and you look at the messages that are there. A lot of people don't realize that you can delete wholesale on those messages and they just leave them inside of the phone. Note what web applications are installed on this, what text files, what picture files, if there are any compressed archives on this. The compressed archives, you'll see more of this on the on the Android platform, because you can load any kind of file that you want to into it. Note that there are any peripheral memory cards. That's happening more and more often today. You can actually plug in a memory card. I just found a new tool for the iPhone 5 in one of the current magazines, where instead of synchronizing your data to using the iTunes interface, you can actually do it over Bluetooth now. They have a little Bluetooth receiver where you can shove a not a SIM card, a memory card or an SD card into that little device, and you can actually pull data off of your phone to a separate little device. So that's going to happen more and more often these days, where there's going to be an extra device that actually communicates with the phone and downloads information to it. This is primarily designed for backing up, but I can see where in the future what they'll do is they'll pull all the data off the phone and put it in that SIM card, so that and delete it from here, so that when you try to acquire the phone and acquire the data, it's sitting somewhere else. This means that we have to learn about the current technology. We need to pay attention to what's going on as experts in our field. If you're a mobile forensics person, you're going to have to learn about all those model numbers and all those peripheral devices that are possible with that particular tool. Next, we're going to talk about tools, the hardware and software. That's some rich data for us to help us actually get this acquisition going.